Welcome to the channel, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, I'm re-reviewing the Panasonic Lumix GH5S Micro Four Thirds Powerhouse. There's a few reasons why I wanted to re-review this camera. One, I just purchased two of these recently, and secondly, I just got on the rumor sites and it looks like the GH5S may be discontinued. The GH5S is a Micro Four Thirds camera, so we are getting a smaller sensor than APS-C or full frame, but don't let the sensor size sway you away from Micro Four Thirds. Under most shooting conditions, this camera will get the job done. Before we get into the review, I just wanted to touch on why I ended up buying two Panasonic GH5S cameras in 2022. So the first two GH5S cameras I owned, I traded in for a Sony a7S III, and then I took that a7S III and a Sony FX3 with me overseas with a lot of expensive lenses, and I was filled with paranoia leaving my camera bag anywhere that I wasn't. Came to realize that I would have had a much better peace of mind having far less expensive equipment with me that still would have given me excellent results, and that's where this GH5S camera comes in. Having small, lightweight lenses like the 25mm f1.7 or the 15mm f1.7 Leica lens gives you a really great lightweight compact camera system that allows you to get really pro results. It might not give me the same sort of subject separation that I'd be able to achieve with the same lens on my Sony FX3 or a7S III, but the image quality is awesome, the dynamic range looks great. I have no problems with the image quality out of these cameras. When the GH5 was released, it was actually punching well beyond its weight. It was holding up with full frame cameras, even in a low light scenario. There's plenty of great tests you can watch on YouTube. It's also an extremely capable camera in 2022. Gives us 10-bit codecs, UHD, DCI 4K, HD up to 240 frames per second, unlimited recording, no overheating, dual SD card slots. So there's a lot to love about this particular camera. The GH5S allows us to change regions from PAL to NTSC, so you can shoot in the 30 and 60 frame rate if you're in North America, or 25 and 50 in PAL. But we also get a third, which is true 24 Hertz. This isn't found even on the Sony FX3, which claims it's a cinema camera. Another big reason why I ended up going back to these cameras is I love the challenge of shooting with them. The Sony a7S III, as great as it is, and I love the 4K 120. It's a boring camera to use. I like having some of my own manual intervention in getting the shots that I want, and I'm more concerned about framing and content than I am now about just getting lots of ridiculous background blur. Without question, getting the background blur can lend itself to having a more professional look. If you're a YouTuber, if you're a filmmaker, it's not the be all and end all. Sure, it's great being able to get that, and I can get plenty of shallow depth of field with this. I'm shooting f2 on Micro Four Thirds right now, which gives us that f4 equivalent background blur, but if I want more, I can get it with a faster lens, or I can just walk closer to the camera itself, and this will give me more subject separation. But it's not the be all and end all anymore. I much prefer having a great shooting experience, great battery life, and I love having the app on my phone so I can connect to the camera and double check all my settings at a distance. These are things that just make the world of difference to my particular workflow. The GH5S is a bit of an anomaly when it comes to Micro Four Thirds. Not only is this a multi-aspect ratio sensor, but it also gives us great low light performance, dual gain ISO, as well as a 1.8 times crop, giving us more background blur and a slightly wider field of view. Let's say, for example, I put a 10mm wide angle lens on the GH5S. Instead of giving us that 20mm equivalent, it'll be more like a 17 or 18, somewhere around there. Might actually be less. I'll put it on screen if I can work out the conversion, but basically we're getting a wider field of view, which also lets in a little bit more light. Let's talk autofocus performance. Now, the GH5S isn't known for having the best autofocus out there, but it's a clear step up over the original GH5, but it's not quite as good as the GH6 thanks to the new processor in that camera. But for contrast detection autofocus on Micro Four Thirds, this is one of the better cameras, and it improved over time. So credit to Panasonic for actually releasing firmware updates to this to help fix the autofocus. I'm using one area mode with body tracking right now, and this is the mode that I choose to use anytime I need autofocus, or if I need to hold something up to the camera like this. This is the mode I will use, but I am kind of constricted to the box that I set up on screen. Would I trust autofocus to nail focus 100% of the time with the GH5S? No, but for standing shots like this, I'm in autofocus right now, it should do an okay job. There might be some pulsing in the background, but odds are it's going to perform pretty well. The newer the lens that you use with this, the better the results you will get as well. Some of the old Panasonic lenses have terrible autofocus on any of the cameras. If you watched my original review, one of my favorite things about this is just the overall ergonomics. I love the grip on this camera, but the GH6 does have a nicer grip in the hand. It's a little bit more prominent, sort of like an Olympus OMD camera or Sony FX3. But this grip, I have nothing to complain about it. My fingers don't get in the way of a lens being mounted onto the camera, so that's always a good thing. The wheels and dials are all in great positions here, and I have no complaints whatsoever. My favorite thing about this camera is the fact we get matching SD card slots over here, which allow us to get a sense of redundancy without getting two different types of media. The battery life on the GH5S is awesome, and even though it comes with the old style batteries, we get far more runtime than you'll find on the new GH6 with the new BLK22 batteries. But if you already have a couple of those BLK22 batteries from something like the S5 or GH6, you can use them in here and get even extended runtimes. The GH5S is fully customizable when it comes to its custom function buttons. I always assign different roles to different buttons on the back of the camera to make life a bit easier, and I always assign the vector scope and waveforms to the front button over here, just for convenience. You can make these do whatever you want. You can also change any of these four on the top to assign them to things that work for you. Another thing I'm a huge fan of is this touch LCD display. Not only is it slightly bigger than the new GH5 Mark II and GH6, we still have the manual focus swipe to focus functionality. I'm not sure why Panasonic removed this. On the new cameras, you actually have to tap an AF on button on the back to lock focus, whereas on this, you can just swipe and you'll be in business. This is the manual focus way of shooting. If you're just shooting in autofocus, they all have the same functionality. The flippy screen is nice and easy to see, even outdoors on a bright sunny day. I'm having no problems looking at the GH5S that I'm filming with right now. There's always a couple of trade-offs with any camera system. The first with the GH5S is the fact that there's no in-body image stabilization, but you can still make this work if you're shooting handheld, depending on the lens you're using and depending on the overall rig. For example, if I'm shooting slow motion out here in the park, I can get a great shot of the plants just moving in the breeze or whatever the case may be, and it will look great. But if I'm doing a follow shot, at least with my skill level, it won't look great. This is where the GH5 or the GH6 will make more sense. The second trade-off with the GH5S is a subjective one. It's the color science. Now, personally, I really love the look of this. It does give your skin a little bit more of a magenta look, which can be corrected in post very easily or in camera just by shifting around the hue. This was a big problem with the original GH5. It gave the skin a sickly green look, so I always had to move the hue down towards the red a little bit more to kind of cancel that out. So you'll either like it or you won't, but I think this is a big upgrade over the original GH5. I don't think it's quite as nice as the GH6, but it's very close. Let's talk about audio and the internal preamp. So we get a 3.5mm audio input on this camera, which handles these wireless microphones without any problems. But if we want to up our audio game and use a shotgun microphone, I have in my hand the DMW XLR adapter from Panasonic. Here's the DMW XLR adapter up close. I actually got this for free when I purchased my original GH5. There was a special offer. You could redeem this online and it was sent out. So it's been great. It gives us these two XLR channels so we can attach some shotgun microphones or even a wireless pack into the XLR port with a special adapter. We also get all of this extra functionality here so we can boost the gain, reduce the gain, and turn each independent line up and down. This is a really great solution, especially if you're using something like a shotgun mic. There's a misconception that goes on with Micro Four Thirds where people feel like it doesn't have as good dynamic range. I think one of the biggest problems is a lot of people leave everything set to auto, which is fine. I think the auto exposure isn't as good. The GH5S along with the BGH1 has 14 stops of dynamic range. So there's plenty of dynamic range in this camera when shooting Vlog-L. If you can't get this to work, you're doing something wrong. At the end of the day, would I recommend the Panasonic GH5S for someone looking to get into Micro Four Thirds? Well, it's one of those questions that really depends on your shooting scenario. For me, I wanted a cost-effective multi-camera setup that gave me great results, great low light performance, low rolling shutter, and a great small lens selection that were great for traveling. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. But if you need a great handheld camera or something where you need great eye autofocus, I would probably give this camera a miss. If you're someone who loves to get their hands dirty and learn the ins and outs of how a camera works to get the best results, learning how to manually focus, if this sounds like something you're into as a filmmaker who might want to adapt lenses to the system as well as shoot in DCI 4K, then this camera will be the one you're looking for. I think a lot of people who complain about low light performance with Micro Four Thirds haven't used a GH5S in any real capacity, or at least compared the footage up against current camera models. I've done that, I've done videos about it. I really feel like the GH5S holds up even in 2022. Anytime you're thinking about buying into a system or a new mount like Micro Four Thirds, the lens selection should be of the utmost importance. And one of the great things about Micro Four Thirds, there's plenty of great lenses on the market already from Panasonic, Olympus, Sigma, T-Artisans, Meike, and many others. I would say this is the second best system when it comes to choosing lenses, right behind that of the Sony E-mount, which has lots of great third-party support. If you want a one-and-done lens, I can highly recommend this 10 to 25mm f1.7 zoom lens. It covers all of the main focal lengths for shooting with Micro Four Thirds, and it will give you some of the most 3D pop on this particular camera system. So this is my recommendation for the best lens for Micro Four Thirds. But if you're on a budget, I'll also link down to the 25mm f1.7 prime lens. It gives you a spectacular look at an affordable price. It's only a couple of $100 and you get lots of subject separation. It's small and light. If you plan on doing any type of travel, it's a really great lens for that as well. If you've just purchased the GH5S, it's a really special Micro Four Thirds camera. It will give you excellent results and it will serve you well for years. These things are almost bulletproof, so enjoy it. Thanks for watching, folks. My name's Shane. If you've enjoyed the video, please leave a thumbs up. I appreciate that. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again. See ya.